Revealed, 3 haunted road trip experiences with sinister secrets and unexplained terrors. The sun blazed overhead as Sarah steered her Honda through the heart of America, her heart already heavy with worries of being a single mom. "This is going to be fun," she said, trying to convince herself while her kids giggled in the back seat, clinging to the hope of adventure. But lurking beneath the laughter was an unsettling current, something dark and intangible that hung in the air. Minutes turned into hours, and the rhythm of the highway turned from familiar suburban bliss to a chilling emptiness, the kind that gnawed at her spirit. As the sun began to set, desolate landscape seeped into view, the cheerful scenery swallowed by a feeling of dread. Faded billboards flashed messages of long-gone roadside attractions. They looked like ghosts themselves, haunting reminders of a forgotten past. Eager to break the growing tension, they pulled into an old rest stop, the air thick with a sense of decay. "Welcome to Shadow Hollow," a sign read, sending a chill down Sarah's spine. She snapped a photo of Jamie and Lucy smiling against a peeling mural, unaware of the blurred figures slipping through the background. "Just a trick of the light," she muttered, but a whisper of unease curled around her heart. As they climbed back into the car, the whisper of voices grew louder, and felt like shadows creeping from the corners of her mind. Each comment echoed her fears. Could she keep them safe? She shook her head, attempting to drown out the chaos, but with each passing mile markers, paranoia festered, and the landscape turned monstrous. "Mom, look!" Jamie yelled, pointing down a shadowy side road. A shortcut. Without thinking, she took the turn, the trees hugging the road so tightly they looked like hungry beasts ready to swallow them whole. Panic began to settle in her belly. An icy grip clutched at her heart, and the road seemed to stretch endlessly into a void. "What is happening?" Lucy squeaked, her voice a fragile echo in the suffocating silence. Suddenly, a figure emerged, a scruffy man named Hank, popping out of the woods like a malevolent trickster. "Lost, huh?" he called, with a smile that didn't match his eyes. Instinct screamed for her to drive away, but she smiled weakly. "No, we're good." Hank's smile faltered, the warmth stripped away by a predatory hunger. Terror swept over her as she hit the gas, glancing at the rearview mirror. Was he following them? As night claimed the sky, an oppressive darkness settled in. Abandoned vehicles littered the roadside, bearing messages like "Turn back and they are watching." Fear churned in her gut like acid. "Mom, I don't like it here," Jamie uttered, the tension thickening around them. But the whispers escalated into harrowing assertions. Things unseen clawed at the edges of her sanity. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As dread engulfed her fully, Sarah looked back at her children. "Guys?" she called, her voice hoarse. Silence answered. The seats were empty, the laughter just echoes in her mind. Her heart pounded, fear slicing through the night like a knife. Where were Jamie and Lucy? Panic surged as she pulled over in a fit of terror. The road loomed before her, twisted and redirecting into an unknown hell. Echoes of laughter faded, replaced by an unyielding darkness that swallowed her whole. Something sinister awaited in the night. Would she ever find them? Would she ever return? The headlights of the Honda flickered across the road, but the darkness was unyielding. Sarah's breath hitched, a chilling knot coiling tighter in her chest. "Jamie! Lucy!" she shouted, desperation twisting her voice. They had to be somewhere, but the silence enveloped her like a shroud. Her heart raced. She strained her ears for any sound, any sign that they were still close. The only replies were distant rustles, echoing throughout the suffocating stillness. Every second felt like an eternity. Was this some twisted joke? She hardly believed it was possible for kids to vanish so quickly in broad daylight, yet here she was, alone and terrified. Panic surged as she punched the accelerator, the gravel crunching beneath the tires like bones cracking underfoot. "Stay calm, Sarah. You can fix this," she whispered, though her shaking hands betrayed her calm facade. A desperate plan formed. Maybe she could retrace their route, find the last place they had been together. With that thought, she slammed the gear into reverse, throwing gravel as she spun around, but every inch of the road felt profoundly wrong. The trees twisted, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal hands, and shadows flitted just beyond her sight, darting like insects. Each fleeting glimpse made her heart race. "Get a grip," she whispered, fighting against the growing dread smashing against the walls of her resolve. As she passed the rest stop again, she glanced at the peeling mural. The colors dripped like blood, and something inside her flickered an instinct, a sliver of caution. Maybe they just wanted to play, she thought, convincing herself they might have run off, intrigued by the eerie backdrop of the forgotten stop. But then, she glimpsed at a flicker of movement, a shadow creeping in the headlights. A shiver crawled down her spine. Was it just her mind playing tricks, or was something hiding just out of view? With a pounding heart, she rolled the window down, the air outside heavy and damp. "Jamie? Lucy?" Her voice trembled, reality blurring under the weight of hopelessness. As if on cue, a giggle. A fleeting sound spun around her, childlike yet distorted, twisting her stomach. "Mom!" Another voice, almost an echo, beckoned from deeper within the trees. The chilling recognition of Lucy's laughter sent panic spiraling through Sarah's veins. "Where are you?" she screamed, the night swallowing her words, but the laughter broke into a chorus, chirping and mocking, dancing just beyond her grasp. Tears streamed down her cheeks, fueled by terror. She shot the car door open, step after step pulling her deeper into the shadows. "I'm coming!" she yelled. She clutched her phone tightly, its flashlight barely penetrating the thickness of darkness surrounding her. Then she froze. A figure loomed ahead, tall, crooked, face hidden beneath a hat that draped low. Every instinct screamed for her to turn back. Are you looking for someone?" His voice was low, gravelly, as if stones rolled around inside his throat. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. "Where are my kids?" He laughed, a sound that sent ice racing through her veins. "They're close by. You should join them." "Get away from me." She backed away, her eyes scanning the shadows behind him. Did he know where they were? "Run," he whispered, almost sweetly, "before the darkness finds you." Suddenly, Sarah felt its cold tendrils wrapping around her ankles, dragging her down into the abyss of night. Hopelessness threatened to swallow her whole. As she fought against the unseen grip, the man's laughter echoed through the trees, mingling with the eerie giggles nearby. They were close, but what awaited her among the shadows? Just then, a piercing scream cut through the air. "Jamie!" The chilling cry shattered the silence, leaving Sarah gasping in terror. In a heartbeat, she raced back to the car, the sobs of her heart blazing within her. How many nights would she be trapped in this waking nightmare? Would she be forced to join the shadows? "Mom!" Another voice cried, and as the headlights flickered back to life, she swung around. Would she dare venture into the heart of the darkness that had stolen them? With the air thick with dread, one thought blared in her mind: there was no turning back. What awaited her in the clutches of Shadow Hollow? The choice had to be made, and time was running out. Would she be brave enough to enter the depths and confront what lay within? The night pressed down on Sarah like a suffocating blanket, the darkness wrapping her in a tight embrace that drenched her in dread. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat a reminder that time was slipping away. She pivoted back towards the ominous trees that loomed with treachery. "Jamie!" "Lucy!" she screamed again, the desperate echo swallowed by the oppressive silence. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the screams her children's voices cut through her with a sharp intensity. As she stood, straining to listen for another sound, the air buzzed with anticipation that a chill licked at her skin, colder than the night itself. She swallowed the lump in her throat, trying to focus. There has to be a way to find them, she thought, her mind racing. But rational thought was overshadowed by the ghastly laughter that resumed, sending shivers cascading down her spine. Then, a rustle just behind the veil of trees. She glanced toward it, a sudden surge of adrenaline propelling her forward. "Please!" she pleaded into the dark. But then, her phone's weak light exposed the ground around her skulls, cracked and weathered, peeking through the foliage like grotesque children's dolls lying as forgotten playthings. She stumbled back, the sudden revelation halting her breath. The screaming laughter transformed into something distorted, echoing with a twisted malice. This realm was not just dark, it was alive, throbbing with an evil pulse that reached out for her. "Get a grip, Sarah. They need you," she whispered harshly to herself. There was no choice but to march forward, the spectral giggles prodding her deeper. Each step felt like a finger pressing against her back, urging her to continue. Finding a path, she pushed between the gnarled trunks of trees, their bark twisted like broken bones. Shadows danced around her, teasing her vision, flickers that taunted her from afar. Fear and determination flipped within her gut as she shouted, "I'm coming for you." Just then, the laughter erupted again, louder this time, echoing off the trees like an angry banshee. "Mommy, help!" They were close, she could feel them, yet the way forward grew sinister, the shadows thickening with every breath she took. "Is anyone there?" she yelled, testing the darkness, hoping for some reply, some hint of presence beyond the laughter. "Lucy? Jamie?" A response came back, a whisper so faint it turned her blood cold. "We're playing, but what kind of game required such horrid stakes?" Suddenly tormented by fear as she pressed on, each bite of fallen leaves underfoot felt like crackling bones. What kind of monsters hid in this place? Were her children truly just ahead, or were they already too far gone? The laughter ceased. A heavy silence hung heavy in the air, thick and oppressive. Then came a deep rumble, something shifting not far from her, and the darkness seemed to ripple around her. The air turned electric just before a figure emerged. Tall, hunched, with wide-set eyes that glowed faintly like embers in the night. It beckoned her closer, a crooked finger signaling her as though welcoming her into an embrace. Mommy Jamie's voice drifted back to her, ethereal and thin, shivering with fear. "No!" Sarah shouted, terror gripping her. "I want to let you take them." Just as she turned to flee, something tugged at her foot, cold and vine-like. She kicked against it, adrenaline surging, but the grip only tightened, pulling her back. With a gasp, she stumbled, landing hard against the earth, the darkness swelling around her, hungry and insatiable. "Help us!" The grotesque laughter returned, melding with the cries of her children. The shadows pressed in closer, the night throbbing with a chilling rhythm, drawing her deeper into an inescapable void. Desperation clawed at her throat as she fought against the tendrils of dread wrapping around her mind. "I want to die here." She screamed with every ounce of remaining strength, but the more she fought, the tighter the darkness gripped. As the laughter crescendoed, one thought screamed in her mind: would she leave the shadows to claim her children, or would fear consume her whole? And then she heard it, a faint whisper that wrapped around her, chilling her to her very core: "Join us in the dance of shadows." What horrors awaited her if she couldn't escape? Would she fall into the same darkness that had ensnared her children? Teeth raked against the air like claws, scraping and whispering just out of reach. Sarah's heart thundered, drowning out all other sounds. The cold tendrils of darkness began to shift, pulling at her like a malevolent tide, dragging her deeper into the abyss. Panic surged within her as she clawed at the ground, the earth slick and wet beneath her hands. "No! Not this! Not my children!" She twisted, trying to break free, but with every desperate movement, they only tightened their grip, the shadows whispering sweetly, coaxing her to surrender. "Mommy," the voice was Jamie, washed with a painful echo that twisted inside her chest. Shadows danced around her, distorting forms both familiar and grotesque. "Mommy, come play." "No. You're not real," she shouted, her voice rising above the cackles that hissed and snickered around her. But those words felt hollow in her throat, shaking against the certainty that something was very wrong. With fierce resolve, she summoned every ounce of strength, forcing herself to stand. The figure loomed larger, its ember-like eyes smoldering with hungry anticipation. If she hadn't known fear before, this was death tangibly breathing down her neck. "Leave my children alone," she screamed, rage fueling her, a fire flickering in the cold. With a primal roar, she lunged toward the figure, a shadow clung to her ankle, attempting to rip her back. The world swirled a kaleidoscope of nightmares and Sarah lost her footing, crashing into the ground. She caught a glimpse of a different figure now, Lucy, her little girl, standing amidst a chaotic tempest of dark. The child looked lost, her small arms stretched toward the sky, as if reaching for an escape that didn't exist. "Lucy! I'm coming!" Sarah cried, scrabbling to reach her. But shadows surged forward, engulfing Lucy, each flicker of her form consumed under a blanket of darkness. "Mommy!" Lucy's voice pleaded. "Help!" It's so dark. As if provoked by her desperation, the shadows screeched, their laughter sharper, more chaotic. Each note felt like glass against her skin. Something shattered in Sarah's mind, and she barreled forward, fueled by anguish. Rushing through the grip of darkness, she felt claws sweeping past her face, just inches away, grasping for her like a school of fish, circling, hungry. Fear was a living thing, clawing at her chest. "I want to let you take them," she yelled, charging into the heart of shadows. But suddenly silence. An eerie hush fell, the laughter a memory fading into an unsettling echo. There, in the quiet, she caught sight of the twisted figure ahead, now unmoving. "Join us," it rasped, the voice dripping with mockery. "Join us, Sarah. Give in." A cold sweat broke across her skin. She could feel her resolve wavering, the words sinking deep. What if Lucy and Jamie were right? What if playing really meant something more sinister? "She's mine," Sarah cried, and as she uttered those words, tendrils stretched toward her from the shadows. They wove into a tapestry of nightmares, pulling Sarah closer, drawing her nearer to their depths, as thick and black as the night above. "Mommy!" Jamie's voice rang out, clear now, desperate and sharp. "Save us. Please." Fury ignited within her, Sarah lunged again into the darkness, clawing for the sounds of her children. The shadows flickered, their forms warping, revealing faint silhouettes of Lucy and Jamie, grasping at something she could not see. With a roar of determination, she pushed forward, but the shadows wrapped around her, this time confining her, pulling her closer to the towering figure. "Sarah," it whispered, a chilling lullaby, "let the darkness claim you." But what would it mean to join them? To embrace this sinister realm? Panic sent a jolt through her. Before she was lost again, she had to make the choice. "Mommy!" Their cries echoed in unison, stirring something hot and raw within her. Clenching her fists, Sarah screamed with all her might, "I won't give up. I love you." Just as everything threatened to shatter around her, a flash of sudden brightness pierced the heart of darkness. She could sense an opening, a glimmer of hope within the insanity. With one final thrust against the shadows, she leaped towards the light, heart racing, praying her children would follow. But would they find their way back? Or were they shadows lost forever in this cursed place? And as her hand reached for the light, she felt something cold and familiar wrap around her wrist, pulling her back into the darkness one last time. The grip tightened on Sarah's wrist, icy fingers threading through her flesh, pulling her back into the void from which she had just fought to escape. Her heart raced with panic, each throb echoing through her chest like a drumbeat of dread. She could still hear their voices, could still feel their presence, but they were slipping away, fading like smoke in the wind. "No! Let me go!" she screamed, fighting against the darkness surrounding her, but it was too strong. Tendrils of shadow wrapped around her limbs like snakes, squeezing the breath from her lungs as despair settled into her bones. Mommy Jamie's voice came from nowhere and everywhere, a haunting lull that twisted her insides. "Mommy, please, it's so dark." Her world spun, twisting into an endless spiral of black and gray as shadows surged around her, shifting and writhing like a living creature. Panic clawed at her throat, and she felt herself being pulled toward that familiar figure, the one that had beckoned her before, its glowing eyes swimming in darkness. "Join us," it whispered again, soothing and seductive, like a promise. "It's easier to let go. Join the endless night." "No." She clawed at the air, the silence around her suffocating. In that moment, memories flooded her mind, her children's laughter, their smiles, the warmth of their hugs. It bolstered her. "I want to let you take them." With a surge of will she didn't know she possessed, Sarah yanked her arm free from the shadow's grasp, stumbling forward into the swirling darkness. She pushed through the cloying shadows, heart pounding in her ears, calling out for her children, searching for any sign of them. "Lucy! Jamie!" She cried out, each syllable laced with terror, and then, like a beacon, she saw it, a pale glow shimmering through the dense darkness. It beckoned her, radiating warmth and familiarity. Instinct took over, she dashed toward the light, hope surging within her despite the whispers clawing at her mind. "Come back," the shadows hissed, their chilling breath washing over her, sweet and terrible. "You belong with us." But the memory of her children held her firm. Their faces, their innocent eyes, she would not fail them. She pushed harder, crashing through the darkness with a wild scream, driven by desperation. As she neared the light, she felt something huge behind her. The air shifted, vibrating with a hungry anticipation that made her skin crawl. Was it the figure? Had it followed her? Almost there, she shouted to herself, just as her fingers brushed against the edge of the light, a shadow whipped out, wrapping around her throat like a noose. Sarah gasped, choking, falling back. It pulled her into the abyss, a suffocating embrace. In that moment, she caught a glimpse of Lucy and Jamie, their faces emerging from the dark, eyes wide with fear. "Mommy!" they cried in unison, reaching toward her, fragile and desperate. "No!" Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps as she struggled against the darkness. "I'm not leaving you. Hold on." The shadows roared around her, their swirling mass congealing into a solid form, demanding, relentless. "Join us, or lose them forever," it threatened, a sinister ultimatum that sent ice coursing through her veins. Before she could respond, two cool hands grasped hers, her children clinging to her like lifelines, pulling her along. But the darkness tightened, squeezing them together, a fierce grip that threatened to tear them apart. "Trust me," Sarah shouted, though doubt gnawed at her. In that blinding light hanging just within reach, she sensed it, a promise of salvation. But what if it was a trap? With strength born from fear, she lifted her other hand, grasping for the light again. "We can do this together," she yelled. The shadows screamed, a cacophony of rage drowning her, but she felt Lucy and Jamie's grip firm, their presence spurring her on. As they all lunged toward the light, a deafening roar erupted behind them, an anguished wail that echoed deep into her soul. It was then she realized the very essence of the darkness was fighting for its prize, steeling herself for whatever lay ahead. They dove together, blinded by the brightness as the shadows shrieked. Did they have the strength to break free, or would this moment seal their fates forever? But the light flickered, dimming as if it were snuffing out. Was this the end, or a new beginning? Sarah had no answers, only the chilling feeling that somehow, someone was watching from the shrouded depths what awaited them on the other side of that light. The light surged, bright and blinding, enveloping them in a warm embrace. For a moment, Sarah felt weightless, as if she were floating on a cloud. The shadows screamed behind them, their furious wails dampened by the brightness that now consumed her completely. Then, just as swiftly as it had come, the light receded. The air shifted, snatching away the warmth, replacing it with a bone-chilling cold. With a gasp, Sarah blinked, finding herself not in the comforting glow of safety, but in a narrow, dimly lit corridor. The walls were slick and cold, pulsing with a strange energy that made her skin crawl. "Mommy?" Jamie whispered, his voice shrill and trembling. Lucy clutched his hand tightly, her wide eyes scanning the oppressive darkness around them. "Stay close," Sarah commanded, her voice steadier than the panic that twisted within her. She took a step forward, feeling the floor beneath them shift, as if the very ground was trying to swallow them whole. The corridor stretched endlessly before her, the air thick with an acrid smell that made her stomach churn. It felt wrong, like they had stumbled into a forgotten realm where despair clung to the air like mist. "Where are we?" Lucy asked, her voice echoing softly in the narrow space. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, glancing back at the shadows that seemed to fade into the walls. Memories of that haunting figure tugged at her mind, their promise of peace wrapping around her thoughts like a shroud. "But we have to keep moving." With determination, Sarah led them down the corridor, each footfall echoing ominously. The walls pulsed with a low hum that resonated through her bones, mimicking her racing heart. She felt as if something was slithering just out of sight, watching them with cold, unyielding eyes. Were they still being pursued? Suddenly, the corridor opened into a larger chamber. The air grew thick, and she noticed flickering shadows cast against the walls, moving as if they had a life of their own. Old photographs hung wildly, their faces scratched and distorted, as if they were desperate to escape the grasp of time. Sarah shivered, wrapping her arms around her children as she stepped forward. "Look," Jamie pointed, his voice trembling. In the center of the room, a large mirror stood, cracked and warped, reflecting the chamber but somehow distorting it. She could see their faces, but they looked different, hollowed out and bereft of life. "Don't look at it!" Sarah shouted, panic lacing her voice as memories surged unbidden, of a time long before this terror, when the normalcy of family outings filled their lives. "Close your eyes." But it was too late. Lucy gasped, her eyes glued to the mirror's depths. "Mommy, I see us." Her voice trembled, a mix of wonder and dread hanging thick in the air. "What do you mean?" Sarah stepped forward, reaching for her daughter, but the child was entranced, stepping away from her grip as if being drawn into the reflection. "Lucy!" "No!" Sarah cried, lunging toward her. The mirror rippled, as if undulating with dark energy. At that moment, a bone-chilling laugh echoed through the chamber, reverberating in the very essence of Sarah's being. It planted seeds of dread, twisting her insides. "Do you see? They are here with us." Sarah spun around, heart pounding, frantically searching for the one who spoke. But the chamber was empty, save for the mirror, pulsating ominously. "Get away from there!" she yelled, grasping Jamie's hand tightly. They had to leave, to escape this dark place that felt all too familiar. "But Mommy, I can see them," Lucy murmured, eyes wide as if she was in a trance, drawn to the mirror's dark secrets. "What do you see, Lucy?" Panic bubbled in Sarah's throat as she felt the pressing weight of shadows creeping back into the chamber. The walls began to shimmer, warping and twisting into grotesque shapes. What lay behind the veil? What histories were trapped in this place? "Come back. We need to go." But Lucy stood, transfixed, as the air thickened with a whisper that seemed to wrap around them like chains. "Stay," the voices beckoned, echoing through the chamber. "Stay with us forever." And just like that, the world around her collapsed in a deafening roar, shadows clawing at their sanity. Would she lose her children to the darkness, just as she feared? A new wave of dread washed over her as Sarah struggled to keep her grip. The mirror pulsed again, and with a chilling clarity, she wondered, could this truly be the entrance to their nightmares? What secrets lay beneath its surface? The mirror's surface rippled violently, as if it were a living thing, ready to devour them whole. Sarah's heart raced, pounding against her ribcage like a trapped bird. "Lucy!" she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. The air thickened, stifling her cries. "Mommy, it's so beautiful," Lucy replied, her voice dreamy and far away. She swayed slightly, caught in the otherworldly pull of the mirror. Sarah's pulse surged, she had to act fast. "Get your sister!" Jamie cried, his small body shaking against her side. She grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to meet her gaze. "Look at me, Jamie," she urged, fear lacing her words. "We have to pull her away. She may not be herself." Jamie nodded, though his eyes were wide with terror, reflecting the flickering shadows around them. Each tendril of darkness seemed intent on reaching Lucy, dragging her closer to the chaos within the mirror. The whispered promises slithered through the air, beckoning her to stay, to join them. "Lucy!" Sarah shouted again, and this time, her voice broke. She lunged forward, nearly stumbling as she tore Jamie from her side when he didn't move fast enough. Running towards Lucy felt like moving through molasses, a suffocating weight dragging her down. Just as she reached her daughter, a howl erupted from the mirror, almost a living growl. It shook the chamber, resonating through the walls. Shadows peeled from the corners, morphing into grotesque images of twisted faces, contorted in grief and fury. Paranoia gripped Sarah's chest. Were they trapped within that glass? Were those faces reaching out to her? "Mommy!" Lucy's voice finally snapped back to momentary clarity. "Help me! Grab my hand!" Sarah yelled, reaching out for Lucy, her fingers brushing against the cold skin of her trembling daughter. But just as their hands almost connected, something yanked at Lucy, a dark shadow enveloping her. "No!" Jamie screamed, his small voice barely audible above the cacophony. "Let go of her!" Sarah shouted, adrenaline flooding her senses. With a primal urge to protect, she lunged, pulling Lucy with one powerful yank. In that instant, the mirror spat a sickening wave of black energy, striking Sarah square in the chest. It knocked the breath from her body, and she fell backwards, sprawling onto the unforgiving floor. Lucy stumbled but didn't fall, dazed. The moment of confusion lingered as shadows retreated, hissing and fading back into the walls. Sarah scrambled to her feet, clutching Jamie once more. "Let us go. Now!" she commanded, her heart still racing from the energy surge that vibrated through the room. But as they turned to run, the wall behind the mirror pulsated, and a deep crack split through the surface, extending in sinister patterns like veins spreading across flesh. Dark tendrils emerged from the crevice, worming their way through the air, searchlights hunting for light, chasing them. The crack widened, and Sarah felt an icy breath slide over her skin, sending shivers of dread down her spine. "Mommy, what is that?" Jamie squeaked, voice trembling as he stared wide-eyed at the horror unfolding behind them. "I don't know." The walls throbbed, their hum growing louder, a threatening chant signaling the awakening of something far worse than mere shadows. "We need to get out. Now!" But as they turned the corner, retreating from the chamber, every step felt like an eternity. The whispers, once gentle like a caress, now shrieked in anguish. They were growing angrier, more desperate. "Mommy! Where are we going?" Lucy asked, her voice quaking with fear pressing into their small group. "Anywhere but here." But in the back of her mind, dread churned. Panic settled in her stomach as thoughts spiraled. What would happen if the shadows caught them? Then suddenly, the path ahead split into 3 separate corridors, each darker than the last. Each one hummed with the same sinister energy that had pulled them into this nightmare. "Which way?" Jamie whispered, eyes darting between the paths, his grip tightening around his sister. A low growl rose from the corridor furthest to the right, vibrating through the air like a warning. Foul breath of despair seeped through the twists of shadow and dust. "We have to take the left," Sarah decided, clenching her jaw to steady herself despite the erratic pounding in her chest. It has to be safe, but deep down, dread shrieked that safety was a lie. The shadows shifted, as if aware of their choice, and the whispers began again, more frenzied this time, growing louder, surrounding them. Stay with us. As they began to run, every pulsating beat of their frantic hearts echoed along the dark walls. Would they survive the haunting labyrinth? Or would the shadows claim them, forever echoing their whispers in the silence? The dark corridors seemed endless, but the whispers they grew louder. What awaited them in the dark? The corridor stretched ahead, a tunnel of gloom, as Sarah, Lucy, and Jamie dashed into the unknown. Sweat beaded on Sarah's forehead, every breath a struggle against the suffocating taste of anxiety and dread. The whispers surged around them, murmurs of the damned mixing with the chilling echoes of their footsteps. Stay with us, stay with us. It was like a chant, seducing them to turn back, inviting them into the void. Mommy, I can't hear you. Jamie's voice trembled, his small body taut with fear. Just hold on. Don't look back. She had no clue where the left path led, but she could affirm that the darkness behind them was alive and it desired them. The cold grasp of shadows fluttered at their heels, desperate for a taste of warmth. As they sprinted, the walls began to pulse like a heartbeat, a sickening rhythm that quickened conspiratorially with their own. Shadows flickered against the walls, elongating, twisting into horrifying shapes that seemed to leap closer with every turn they took. Look! Down there! Lucy pointed, and at the far end of the corridor, dim light flickered, a beacon in the pitch-black expanse. Run! Sarah shouted, steeling herself against the mounting urgency. They pushed forward, hearts pounding as they neared that sliver of hope. The light grew brighter, becoming a straggly line that opened up into a small nook, carved into the wall as if it had been hidden for centuries. Once in front of it, Sarah hesitated, glancing behind her. The shadows seemed to almost sigh in disappointment. They were still in pursuit, swarming angrily like a pack of hungry wolves. Mommy, hurry! Jamie yelled, fear twisting his voice into a wail. Sarah shoved Lucy and Jamie toward the opening. Go! They squeezed through the gap. On the other side, they found themselves in a dimly lit chamber lined with old images. The flickering light made the faces in the portraits appear alive, distorted in expressions of pain and despair, eyes haunted with sorrow. The air, heavy with the scent of decay, enveloped them like a shroud. All of this, it's wrong, Lucy whimpered, backing away from the nearest painting, the figure within seeming to reach out. It was then that Sarah noticed a large, ornate mirror standing against the far wall, the kind you'd see in old, grand homes, bordered with carvings that twisted into grotesque shapes. But there was no reflection. Just a dark abyss staring back at her. Mommy, I don't like this. Jamie clutched at Sarah's leg, his voice quavering. Let us find another way. Sarah's resolve wavered. She could sense something vile swelling in the air, like an impending storm. But curiosity yanked her toward the mirror, a compulsion she couldn't shake, despite everything inside her screaming to turn away. Maybe we should look at it, she muttered under her breath, stepping closer, her heart racing in anticipation and dread. Suddenly, the mirror trembled, vibrating violently as if responding to her presence. Holes began to appear, gaping mouths opening wide within its surface as if it were breathing. A deep, gravelly voice slithered from the depths of the glass, echoing through the chamber. Will you join me? It rasped, an invitation wrapped in malice. The shadows that had pursued them now hovered at the entrance, forming a suffocating barrier. The whispers morphed into shrieks, a cacophony of pain and heartache that crescendoed, filling the air with anguish. Mommy! Jamie cried out as he stumbled backward, falling against Lucy. Get away from there! Sarah shouted, panic coursing through her. It was a trap. That mirror was the heart of all the evil they had faced, but Lucy, entranced, moved closer. It can help us know. Sarah lunged forward, grasping Lucy's wrist just in time. The voice grew louder, almost furious. Stay with me. What had they fallen into? The room pulsed, the shadows crept closer, blocking their escape. The mirror grasped at Sarah's mind, pulling her dangerously toward the edge of madness. "Lucy, Jamie, we have to run again." She tugged Lucy back, urging her toward the door, but the tendrils of darkness pooled closer, ready to strike. Just as they turned to flee, a piercing scream erupted from one of the portraits, and the faces within began to wriggle and twist, pushing violently against the surface as they begged for freedom. "Don't leave us," they moaned, and the chill in the air thickened, latching onto her like a vice. Would they escape the horrors waiting for them, or would they become the next victims in a cycle of despair? The shadows lunged, and the voice whispered again, now a sinister plea, "Join us, stay forever." Their next move would define their fate. Would they dare to defy the dark? Or would they succumb to its irresistible call? The darkness closed in like a thick fog, smothering everything in its grasp. Sarah could feel the cold tendrils poking at her back, each one whispering doubts, feeding her fears. She yanked Lucy and Jamie away from the horrific paintings and the mirror's ghastly invitation. Their lives were mere threads in this sinister tapestry, and the shadows loomed like hungry wolves. "Just keep moving," Sarah urged, her own voice betraying her panic. They stumbled back towards the nook they'd entered from, but the weight of the room hung heavy on their shoulders. The portraits, how their eyes followed them, pupils flaring with unholy light, made Sarah's skin crawl. Behind her, she heard the whispers morph into desperate cries, echoing a grief that clawed at her heart. "Join us!" Panic surged through her veins like ice. "Don't listen," Sarah shouted over the rising cacophony. She felt Lucy's hand slip from her grip, fumbling back toward the mirror, drawn in like a moth to a flame. "Lucy, no!" Sarah's voice shattered the desperation around them, firing a burst of adrenaline through her. She lunged forward, urgency fueling her every move. With a raw grip, she snagged Lucy's wrist again, pulling her sharply away from the gaping mouth of the mirror. "Let us get out now." But as they turned, a whirl of shadows coalesced at the entrance, blocking their only escape. The room shuddered, as if it too were alive and aware of the presence of its prey. "Mommy, I'm scared," Jamie whimpered, his small body trembling against her leg. "I know, baby, I know. Just stay close to me." Sarah's breath came in quick bursts, panic threatening to overwhelm her rational mind. She had to think quickly. The mirror pulsed, its dark surface now speckled with silvery wisps, transforming into a grotesque image of three children trapped within distorted reflections, twisted and sad. Forever a chill swept through Sarah, as if she had walked over a grave. "We can't let ourselves get trapped here. Look!" Lucy pointed, eyes wide with horror. The portraits on the walls began to warp. Faces melded into one, a grotesque mass of silent screams plastered in agony. Their mouths opened in a synchronized wail heralding a warning and yet another plea. "Get back! We need to break through!" Sarah yelled, adrenaline coursing through her limbs as she moved to push against the press of shadows. She could already feel their icy breath curling around her neck, like a serpent ready to strike. "Help us!" a voice made of sorrow intoned from the masses, reaching into the depths of her psyche. Sarah's insides twisted as she fought to maintain focus. The shadows grasped at her ankles as if to drag her down, while Lucy and Jamie clung to her sides, refusing to give in. They needed an exit now. Suddenly, a thought struck her like lightning. The mirror. It was a portal, a door to something darker, but it might be their only way out of here. "Lucy, find something to break the glass," Sarah commanded, and her friend's dazed expression flickered into determination. "Here." Lucy scrambled to the base of a crumbling pedestal, her hands gripping a jagged piece of stone, sharp with age. "Hold it up. If we shatter the mirror, it might give us the chance to escape." Nodding, Lucy stepped close, unyielding, fear-feeding bravery. As Jamie gripped Sarah's hand, he cried, "Mommy! Let us do this together." With a nod of resolve, Lucy stepped closer to the mirror, ready to strike. Before she could swing, the dark voice surged again. "You cannot escape, join us." They were out of time. The shadows surged, stretching out, inching ever closer. Sarah mustered every ounce of courage, and in one swift motion, she shouted, "Now!" The stone crashed against the glass. But just as the mirror shattered, an otherworldly scream erupted from the depths of the chamber. The faces in the portraits leered, gloating at their misery. The eerie shadows swelled around them like a great wave crashing in. A blinding light burst forth from the shattered mirror, washing over the room as it transformed everything in its wake. But in that moment of hope, a deep rumble of growls filled the air, echoing with a promise of revenge. Would the light be their salvation, or would it swallow them into a worse fate? As they stood on the precipice of uncertainty, their breaths mingled with fear and anticipation. The next heart-stopping decision loomed sinisterly above them, shaking the very ground they stood on. Would they dare plunge into the light, or remain in their horrifying reality? With a last flicker of doubt, Sarah threw herself toward the pulsing light pouring from the shattered remnants of the mirror. The shadows writhed behind her, screeching in fury, but the warmth of the glow beckoned, promising safety and sanity. "Go! Follow me!" she yelled, her voice fueled by instinct as she grasped Jamie's and Lucy's hands with unyielding determination. The moment they dove into the brilliant light, it engulfed them. A sensation like electricity surged through Sarah, igniting her senses. For a heartbeat, it felt as if they were floating, gliding through a surreal realm of colors that twisted like candy. But the splintering screams of the shadows chased them, clawing at the edges of her reality as they tore through the brilliance. Finally, with a sudden rush, they landed hard on solid ground, the brightness giving way to the vibrant hues of dawn. Sarah blinked, disoriented but alive. She gasped for air, rolling onto her side as she caught sight of Jamie and Lucy scrambling to their feet beside her. The familiar warmth of sunlight wrapped around them like a protective blanket. "Mommy?" Jamie whispered, astonishment frosted his young features. Are we safe?" "I think so." Her voice was hoarse but steadier now, as she glanced around the quiet rest area. The peeling murals, the cracked pavement, all of it looked the same. But there was an absence of darkness, an absence of the heavy malevolence that had sought to trap them in its chilling embrace. It was simply a forgotten place, left behind by time. "Did we really escape?" Lucy chimed in, her vibrant innocence shining through the haze of terror they had just faced. "Yes, we did. We're out." Sarah's heart fluttered, but suddenly, a heavy burden lifted. The nightmarish shadows were gone, evaporating like paper in fire. A sense of calm washed over her, though she would never forget the horrors they had faced. Then, like a moment suspended in time, they stood together in silence, drenched in the newfound dawn. A cool breeze rustled through a nearby cluster of trees, the leaves whispering dulcet tunes like a welcoming home. The kids moved instinctively closer, their hands fitting again into Sarah's. "Let us go home," Sarah said, determination blooming in her chest. They could never look back, never revisit the shadows that lurked in the depths of the woods. Forging ahead was their only option. She turned to lead her children back to the car, feeling the warmth of the sun touch her skin like a gentle reminder of the love binding their family together. But as they moved, a glimmer caught Sarah's eye. It was a small trinket glistening in the light, half buried near a rock. Unearthing it, her breath caught in her throat. It was a tarnished locket, its edges engraved with symbols resembling those they had seen in the dark, twisted mirror. With trembling hands, she opened it to find a tiny photograph of the three children entwined together in a joyful embrace, faces familiar yet haunting. The laughter that filled her memories transformed into a soft echo, warning her of the past they narrowly escaped. But now, she felt different, braver. They had faced darkness and prevailed. "Mommy, what's that?" Jamie asked, glancing at the trinket with wide eyes. "Just a memory," she replied softly, tucking the locket safely in her pocket. "A reminder of how strong we are together." And with that, Sarah led Jamie and Lucy away from the shadows of Shadow Hollow, never once looking back, but carrying the lesson in her heart. Hope sometimes shimmered even in the thickest darkness, but it took a fierce love and unwavering trust to find the way out. As they drove off into the rising sun, the landscape filled with promising light, Sarah smiled, knowing the bonds they forged in darkness now glimmered even brighter. Thank you for embarking on this journey with us. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Let's hear what you think. And wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.